It's Leader Show. I'm your host today, Adrian Evans, and absolutely delighted to have Neil Davis on the show today. Neil, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. Just to give some introduction, obviously, Neil is the general manager for EMEA and Latin America for HPE's non-stop business. And on this show, we're about understanding how business is done and not just what is achieved within business. And I have it on very good authority. And just a quick declaration, Neil is a client and we work together and partnered together on projects. But I have it on very good authority that Neil is a trusted leader about, again, how you do business rather than just what you do as business. So without further ado, Neil, I wonder if you could tell us more about what your approach is to leadership.
I think so. I've been in the non-stop business for a long period of time, and so I've come up through the business and I've done a number of the roles. So I think what's key to me is the culture of the organization I joined, which is not necessarily the organization I'm in now, has and the people I've worked with has really kind of focused how I think about the problem space, I guess. And what I'm used to is having a knowledge of what the people who work for me actually have to do. So I've done those roles and I've done the job directly, so I understand the challenges. And in essence, I think what's always important to me is that we are customer focused. And when we look at the customers, in my opinion, it's not just the people who buy off us that are important. It's their customer base is what we're serving, and that's what's kept it interesting for me. Is we directly can see what we do and how it impacts our customers. So that's what we have to think of as their end user. And then, so it's knowing what we do, the impact we have, and then it's around being able to be, I think, honest and real with the team. It's difficult, obviously, when you're in management where you're caught between two positions, the people you work with and the people you work for. But translating that, I believe. My role is to free up my team's time to be able to deal with our end user customers. And so I think it's about being honest, about being reliable, a bit about being available, and actually being the way that I ensure that they have their time free to do what's important.
Brilliant. I love that. I think I've always looked for a quote from within the podcast, and I think I've already got it, which is your mission is to free up your team's time so they can focus on the priorities for customers.
Well, that's what's important, isn't it? It's the I remember a period when I went into management originally, which was probably around 2013. And someone came to me from a previous management who was just being micromanaged to death. To the point where a very good person was incapable of working,
right?
Because everything was being questioned in effect.
Sure.
And so you see the opposite, which is, for where someone is overbearing and is trying to get involved and do that person's job, it becomes impossible for the person to function. So I think if you have good people, you need to ensure that they're spending their time doing what's actually important for us, and not tying them up with internal process.
I couldn't agree more. It's obviously what we're all about here at Payment Leaders Advisors. You mentioned two words that were really interesting there. You said about being honest and real with employees or people that ultimately report to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think, well, my personal belief is that there are always times that you have to have difficult conversations with people, whether it's providing what their measurement's going to be or providing tasks which are perhaps not palatable, or they don't want to do. But I think what's important to me is they understand why I'm asking them to do it or why I've had to give them that, rather than just simply, giving it to them and telling them to go away. And so the point being is in essence, I potentially go too far the other way is the risk, which is you inform them to death.
Sure,
But
sure.
I would like them to understand why I've done it rather than just the do it. And as I said, with hard information, particularly as a sales team with quota setting and things like that, you have to understand or try and make clear where the information's come from and what the limitations are of doing this, so that hopefully that they can come with you. It's because those type of things are contentious and can cause upset to people. So trying to provide the narrative and explain and be honest to say, what we can do, what we can't do, why we've done it, what the reasons are, and hopefully give them so that they're as informed enough or as much as they can be to understand the rationale behind it.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's been that season, hasn't it? December and January of calibrating, but also looking at budgets, etc. So I'd imagine there's been a few conversations.
Well, our year end is slightly different because our year end, oddly, is at the end of October.
Oh, okay.
Still takes a challenge to get your head around when it's not even on a quarter end. But yeah, we go through a very busy period of closing the year, and then it's the setup for next. And ensuring that goes smoothly is a non-trivial exercise.
Beautifully put. So why don't we just sort of shift a little bit? Can you share, therefore, how you actually recruit and build teams?
Well, I guess I have been in both the roles that I've done in management. One which was within the UK, some past, and now a wider geography basis in EMEA and Latin America. I've just picked up Latin America. I've been lucky to inherit a mature team. So that has two issues. So managing mature employees and managing new employees are quite a different skill set, and that's something that has often been at odds with other people in the organisation, which is that the things you're asked to do for a mature team is not the same necessarily, with highly experienced people as you would do with a bunch of early career people, and so. For most of the team, they haven't needed a great deal of intervention management. It's around the business and the business process. But one of the challenges I face with any mature team is bringing newer members of team and refreshing that. And it is a challenging thing to do, because I guess I'm in an unusual situation, which is I'm still. Although through takeover, I've changed brands many times, I'm still with the same company I started with, which is perhaps a rarity these days where people hop. And particularly we see younger generations wanting to move around a lot. And so, what I've always tried to do is secure my good experienced people, keep them motivated, keep them interested. Because they're the easiest people to keep the business going with the field of expertise they have. And at the same time, look to bring in people who want to participate in our business. And I've done that through a number of ways. So either recruiting people who have worked through sort of aligned companies, we could call. So perhaps they've come from a technical basis or an engineering basis, and then try and move them up into a pre-sales technical role. The other one that I've been a big believer of is the UK organisation had an intern program, and so when I came back into both times in management, we've used interns. So one of my most, I would say, successful recruitments has been an early career young lady who joined us after being our intern for 13 months.
Wow. Okay.
So in that way you trial them. They get to know you, you get to know them, and you can see where there's an opportunity. And I would actually say that we have a very high return rate of interns. So through doing an intern a year, all of the ones who have finished university already have all returned to HPE.
Wow. Okay.
Only one has returned to me because I only had one headcount, but the others have returned into elsewhere in the organisation, and that's effectively how I joined, because I was an intern originally for the organisation I was. And so that was, when recruiting is that dilemma, which is, can you go early career? And I guess the mindset I went through, and it took me a while thinking about this, was, well, it must be possible because I did it.
Yeah.
And I think there is that tendency to want to say we can only cope with, experienced people because we're in a complex industry with complex requirements that needs, mature, grown-up people to make the decisions.
Yeah.
But if we never recruit anyone at the bottom end, we will run out of people. So I'm very keen to see how I can replicate that and bring in people. And the approach that we took to building the team and to skill them is actually to pair experienced team members and group them together. Historically, what I always used to see were, the new people are brought in at the bottom and are given the least significant jobs to do until you've proven yourself. Generally, in a sales role, that means smaller organizations, less complex. But the danger with that is they take a long time to learn and they never see the challenges that our larger customers give us, who are always more complex, often not technically, but then it comes around contracts, legal work, relationships, how the companies work. And so what we decided to do, for example, in this case was, so we paired them with an experienced seller and shared all the accounts. Wow. And that way we allowed the senior salesperson, the junior, to work together and can hand over tasks, but then you get exposed to everything rather than only the simple side. And that actually has proven to be successful. And to the point that the new seller has taken on and completed two major opportunities last year on their own. Well, in line, as part of a team, but they ran them. And so we've seen that kind of transition of skill and the growing confidence of the person. So it's difficult, I guess, but it's trying to get people who will believe in what we do and believe in the wider industry about why they are doing that. And that's not just IT, but for us, it's within the payment space, particularly, that they will get to know not only what we're doing, but what it does for our customers, and therefore want to support and grow within the sort of payment space.
Look, I love that approach. Well, I suppose, first of all, in terms of interns, you've lived and breathed this and you're living example of it. So obviously you have an empathy for it and proof points. But I really like what you've done there as well, because that's very rare. Whereas, especially, a younger employee there would get exposure. Certainly you tend to have to work your way up to the smaller customers, to medium, to large. But actually, and again, it's pragmatic. It's worked. You get living proof there that actually two major opportunities. So that's really provoked something for me as well. You mentioned there about actually getting that exposure to enterprise customers, and not necessarily the technology is more difficult, but actually the political elements, the legal elements, the contract elements. How do you navigate a large company structure that is HP to enable your team so they can deliver? Because this is your mission to free up your teams to enable them to do that.
Well, particularly on much larger entities. So in essence, if you like, my protection of the team from complexity is internal rather than external.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us more about
that. And what generally historically has happened is my team are specialists within our technology and application space.
Yep.
And what's fairly unique about my team is that we have more visibility about what our customers do with technology, i.e. the application space and the business usage, than many other technology areas.
Okay.
Because we're not a general purpose platform, because we are, so for example, in the payment space, we know we're very focused on card processing, payments processing. we actually know, we support this application for a customer or this business function for a customer. Whereas in many cases, if you were just selling standard compute, for example, you wouldn't know what it's used for.
Sure.
We do know what it is, so we've got to link through. And so from that reason, we understand what that is. And what happens is we will tend to deal with the people in that space within the customer. And so historically, we've spent time with, you deal with people who run the infrastructure, but also tended to run the application as well, so that you would get visibility of what the business side is doing. When it comes to the wider one, we are specialists within our technology, but there is usually a general account manager on the account. And one would hope they are plugged into, the procurement, the legal, the whatever.
Sure.
And so in essence, we work with someone who already navigates usually a much larger customer. When it comes to a smaller one, it's just a case of leveraging the owners of the problem space that we work in and having them pull people in, I guess.
Sure.
But on the larger account, you tend to have existing long-term relationships. So you plug into someone else who is driving that for all the other technology areas as well.
Excellent. Excellent. You mentioned there that the challenge can be as much internal as external. How do you manage and navigate the HP business so that your team are freed up there to do the best work they can do?
Well, in essence, that becomes the role of taking on when, most problems come from any large corporation being a continually shifting organization. And
sure,
reorganization and change breaks the informal networks of how you get things done. And so when people change and when they leave, what we end up doing is when you interface into the standard areas of the business, of our business, the people change frequently, particularly in a territory like EMEA, where we have presence in over 50 countries. Each country has its own teams that do things. And so what I try and take on is ensuring that how we can do business is understood and documented. And actually, there's a lot of work being done on at the moment to push up and say, okay, things have changed. We now need this new list of definitions or these new list of operating rules, but to try and get it to be done once rather than having a team of 30 people all having to learn and do that themselves. So it's about trying to ensure the company, when it changes things, goes back and puts systems and procedures in place that mean we can not disrupt the salespeople's time by having to go and learn and do all this differently in 5 different countries. Because many of the teams work across multiple countries, so it's not just that there's a one-to-one relationship. So if you have a whole region, for example, the Middle East, you may find all the countries operate differently because there's not one operating model in every country.
Sure.
And some of our countries we operate directly in, and some of those we operate through partners. So again, the model changes. So trying to stop repetitive wasted time, in effect, by taking that away and saying, right, someone needs to set a policy or a set of rules, but effectively trying to take that operational overhead away from the customer facing function.
Brilliant. Okay. Just sort of slightly changing tax is we both believe in the value of strengths-led approach that enables others to show up with the best version of themselves and display their skills and their character. I wonder if you could share your lens as to why you believe in that approach to enabling others to focus on their strengths rather than just on the areas where they could improve.
I'm not sure. Could you explain a bit further? I'm not going.
Yeah, sure. I just get the sense from you and from feedback as well that you recruit people and you get them to do their best work. Yep. You contrast that to many others who say, actually, yes, these are the things you're really good at, but what I'd really like to focus on in your review is the things you're not very good at. Yeah. And
Oh, okay. Yeah.
there's such an emphasis from so many organizations where we emphasize on the bits people need to improve rather than letting them shine and do the great work on their strengths.
I think I've grown through an organization where the role can vary depending on the individual.
Sure.
And actually, it's one of the things we'll go back to the interns that we try and say when we're recruiting interns is actually what the job will be for a year will be depending on what you want to do and what you want to learn.
Yep.
And so, of course, in any job function, there are a set of things that you have to do. But the approach and the way that you want to do it, I think, is down to the individual. And so for that reason, we are able to manipulate the roles to allow people to do it their way rather than specifically our way. Now, I know it's not total anarchy, it can't work that way. But yeah, I think there are, I haven't got the answer what is the best way. And so actually learning from experienced people within your own team. And as I'm going along, I am learning off them, approaches. Some of the people I've worked with over the many years who've worked for me have actually been very senior managers in the past who have returned to sales after the point of doing, a regional or a global role, who simply go, I've done the management thing, which requires me to give up all my life and all my job and work, US, APAC timescales as well as EMEA, and I've returned to, well, give me a simple job to do. I'll go and do that and make sure I'm not bothered too much. But equally, those people, sometimes my best mentors have actually been people who worked for me rather than who I'm, higher up in the organization, because they've been there and they can guide you to the pitfalls that perhaps they've hit in the past. And so I think, it's about providing flexibility to people. And I think the wider the geographical area that you work on, the more you realize that you have to do that, because we don't work in the same time zone. We don't work with the same holiday structure. We don't work in the same, the religious holidays and the things that demand, and they're all starting to compete. And so allowing people to do it their way, and I guess judge on the results rather than the technique is the important thing. How, if you've got a successful way of operating, then it's not to say you all have to do it my way. What we have to do is coach on how people can improve, but perhaps, going back to the strengths question, it's about improving what they do rather than criticizing what they're not doing.
Exactly.
So, look at what they're doing and offer advice on how to do it better rather than pointing out, you're not doing X, Y, and Z. And so, most it's about of growing and asking them to take on more, giving them newer challenges. So asking them to do things outside of the standard job role is one of the things actually HPE looks at for promotion. Is actually that you are taking on a role wider than your job. So to progress, we don't just want people to show that they can do the job they're doing. We also would like them to show that they're contributing to the community. And that's the community within the company and also the community outside the company. Whether that's within IT or whether it's in the business space. To say, how are we adding back? What are the things that we're doing extra, or they're taking on? So items like this, you could argue, is what are they doing to contribute? Whether that's bringing new people in or widening the knowledge base of the overall market. So those things are actually, I would praise HPE for the fact that they are very much looking for people to take on that. And so just getting to the next role isn't that you've hit this bar and now you've passed it. It's a much wider development path.
Brilliant. No, I really like the sort of what I would call non-hierarchical approach there. The fact that you strike me like this with your character as well. The fact you're very open to learning yourself, and the fact that you actually are the general manager, etc., doesn't mean that you have all the knowledge. And in fact, the fact that you will recruit people in to bring that knowledge and learn for them and multiply for that, that's a very impactful piece from any leader.
Well, it's, as I say, that it is an interesting challenge in a very specific field, and particularly in a very specific field where business and application knowledge is as important as the product knowledge.
Yes.
The use of it is, and so how to grow and develop that is really quite a challenge, as there are no formalized courses. The challenge is always, how do you turn someone into a successful person in these fields? There aren't a set of courses, either internal to the company or external, that you can go on to do that. It's most of it appears to be on the job training, and most of it is about building those relationships and knowledge and learning off the people we work with, including our customers, about what they're doing and what they need. And one of the things we're saying, we go out to customer events, we're sort of saying that we want our customers to be more challenging towards us. I think the way the market's developing, it's less and less about choosing between product A and product B. It's about customers coming to saying, we need to fix this problem. How can you help us?
Yes.
And unless we can get the skills to communicate with our customers, to allow them to share that with us, so building the relationship, building the knowledge, feeling that they want to share that with us, unless we can get to that, that's the process of learning and the knowledge delivery we need. But then we have to go and not simply say, well, that's a case about product A. It's about molding and bending things to fit what might be a nuanced problem space.
Absolutely. And it's interesting for me, but particularly in the payment space, the big underwriter, obviously there's a lot of disruptive technology, but actually driving towards making processes and relationships less frictioned. Everyone talks about being frictionless, but less friction is a good place to start. And as you point out there, any customer has multiple choice, usually of a commoditized piece of technology these days. However, you're right. The difference that makes the difference is, do I want to do business with you? Do I trust doing business with you? That for me, my mantra is always trust, like, and respect. Can you solve the problem I want you to? Do I trust you to actually do that and show up with integrity over a period of time? And do I like doing business with you? Is it frictionless as much as possible?
Well, is there a cultural match in the way that people want to do business? Because
absolutely.
and we see that in many cases where working across a larger number of regions, and some of the payments providers that we're working with, they are the national switch of the country, for example. Sure. So some of the places, one of the CEOs we met, it's something like over 80% of the payments in the country touch this system. Yep. And so, showing up, being present, being available, understanding the criticality of these things is really important. Because in many of the places we're operating, if we don't work, we're only a cog in the system. But if we're not there, the company doesn't operate. Because in most cases we are the environment that is facing off to the rest of the external world for that customer. Yep. So if they turn off, the customers can't use them, they can't talk to the other banks. There is no, I remember years and years ago working with a customer in the UK, and they basically said, although we're a bank, we're actually an IT company, because in the principle is if the IT isn't running, we have no business. True. And so understanding that and being able to think, and it goes back to what I said at the beginning, it's thinking about our impact to our customer's customer is actually where the driving point is, because it's not about us thinking about our space, and if we're not operational, we can't do what we are offering. That's the limit of where we do. We know that the impact of what we do will affect all the way down the street. Indeed, I was talking to one of my team who were talking to their customer, and it was slightly worrying that they kind of said that if these systems are off the hour, I think it was for 48 hours, they could lose their banking license. And then they actually when you flowed through the conversation one way and you went, oh, the impact of that, when you flowed back through the conversation the opposite direction, you kind of realized that there was one person that could affect that license. And it was down to the criticality. If that one person did something or, didn't show up, they were hit by it, but that could impact, a multi-billion corporation. And you kind of go, it's the space we live in, but that's what we've been brought up to think of. And that's, I think, so that's a nuance of where I sit within the non-stop space is that's the experience that I expect to try and the belief set to get into my team and my people.
Yeah, I love that, the fact that this is in many cases sort of not just industry, but national infrastructure, and the impact is significant across a country right down to consumers, across that whole supply chain. But I get the sense from you that on the one hand, that's a responsibility, but actually setting those standards and doing so appropriately is something you embrace as well.
Oh no, it's what we're about. So when I joined the company that I originally joined, which was Tandem, which has obviously flowed through Compaq into HPE, but that was the mindset we had, and that was the mindset that we were asked to, asked to, and so as being part of a changed and different organization now, keeping our belief set for our team across the globe, the people who are involved with Nonstop. And I'm not saying that that's not true for the rest of the company as well, but at least the people we interface, that's still the mindset, which is it's not about the job function or what your task is, whether that is within the sales organization, the support organization, the corporate business unit. It's still the fact that when it comes down to it, when customers rely on us and we're asked to respond for any reason, that's what we all jointly feel the responsibility to do.
Excellent.
And trying to get that culturally, and that's where you sort of say, when taking on new people, that's where the challenge, if you get people who jump from organization to organization, can you train them to think in that way, or get them, not train them is the wrong way, but get them to believe in that way, that that's what their role is, important in their role. And their job doesn't just stop at 5:30 or doesn't stop at whatever, because the criticality of what we support goes beyond that.
Sure. No, thank you for sharing that. It's a real good insight into the mindset that enables Nonstop to deliver what it does and live up to the brand, Nonstop.
Well, that is a danger with the branding, isn't it? Which is, if you say it isn't and it does. I do remember when I joined a sales guy many, many years ago showed me a letter from an IT director that literally did say, "Dear, my Nonstop system stopped. Surely this shouldn't happen. Yours," and it was the name of the director of the company. But yeah, educating and working with our customers is key to getting that understanding about what we do, and I still believe differentiates us within the wider technological field, because it's the delivering the experience and the availability beyond just we've done our job because there's a command prompt. It's about, we're not happy unless the customer's able to conduct business.
Excellent. And that's a commitment and a mindset, isn't it, to live to that brand?
Yeah.
Just shifting gears slightly there, what advice would you give to your younger self, if you're reflecting back, possibly yourself in your early 20s? What advice would you give yourself looking back at that lens now?
I think so it's a good question. It's one of these things that I don't often look back and consider, I guess, which is what would you have done differently?
Or what would you have done the same? It doesn't, it's either way.
Well, so my pragmatic view is I'm happy with where I am now, and the decisions I took led me to be here. So in general, wider than just my work career, I tend to have that approach, which is, I guess, my path is a happy path, I guess, from that perspective. I think the things that I've learned over time is, would you have, if you are ambitious is not the right word, but you need to put yourself forward to take on more responsibility rather than waiting for someone to ask you.
Yeah.
And so there have been several inflection points in my career where I was asked to widen the scope. So, I moved from being a technical person to a salesperson.
Yeah.
My region expanded, or it growed, or I was given extra accounts, and those happened kind of organically. Where later in my career, under the mentorship of someone I really respected, who, as I said, was an employee of me as opposed to was if you want to take more control, you've got to go and put your name forward for things. You've got to go and reach out and go, I would like to take on that responsibility. And actually, if you don't, those are the career defining moments where, by not putting yourself forward, you potentially could rule yourself out from any further steps because you're not seen as ambitious or motivated or whatever. And so not all those requests have been taken forward, but I think that was the interesting point, which is perhaps I should have taken more steps like that earlier in my career.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thank you. We firmly believe in the advice we give as a team is that for executives is obviously about creating sponsorship, creating advocacy, but ultimately that proactivity, it's the game changer. And for me, it's the difference between, you can have two people of exactly the same competence. Yeah, that's one who will go through an organization more effectively, because not all of these asks will be said yes to, but actually that availability, eventually somebody will say, actually, I've got a project, and they're going to be career enhancing for all sides. So
the other thing I just would say that I think I've learned, which is important, which is not being afraid to give away your ideas.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is to get change into the organization or from a whole number of ways. Sometimes I found and I've adopted an approach of incubating the idea locally. So rather than expecting a top-down approach, incubate and then try and get it adopted as a worldwide procedure or a worldwide, topic. And what you see, what I have seen is a lot of either waiting for someone higher up to give you the answer, or not wanting to give away your concept and it be owned by someone else. And I think that's sometimes quite difficult, because if you've put the work in to develop something and then you feel someone else is taking credit for it, that emotionally can feel quite challenging.
Yeah,
but actually, if you want to help the organization change, I'm not talking organizationally as a management, but even wider than that, if you want to introduce new ideas and whatever, being able to put smaller teams together to develop something under the covers, and then to say, we have this, will you adopt it, actually has shown, I've learned and we're proving that is success can be successful, but you're having to be able to say then someone else takes it over and it doesn't become yours is the difficult thing to learn about. But I think that has actually been something we've done over the last few years that is starting to show, real genesis.
Yeah, I think that call it ego management, call it selflessness, or call it, actually, I think probably seeing the wider picture. And that's actually one of the things I do like about the payments industry in particular, is you can't do much on your own in the payments industry.
No.
There's lots of great ideas, and with four-party model and various other things, you have to get others involved. And it's interesting. I think the people who do the best in that industry do see the bigger picture and do see the contribution they can make, and then combine that with others' contribution to grow something bigger. So that mindset is very much, I could see how that would, but also the challenges with that as well, definitely, for somebody trying to be ambitious to go through the organization. So coming to the, so what opportunities do you see in financial service industry to create, we touched on in the future, to create less friction for customers and less friction for your customers?
Well, so I guess that leads on to what you were saying about the putting to assemble groups of people together and building something bigger than your individual. So, that is what we've been doing, and one of the things that we've been trying to adopt, and which is within the company, which is what we see with many customers and non-customers that we talk to, is the inability to make traction. The payment space, we know, is incredibly busy. It's continually changing, a lot of customer demands, a lot of regulatory demands.
Yeah.
And what we see is, as with the mature technology space, people are starting to lose many of the people with the skills. So, maturing people retiring, moving off into other industries. And so what we felt we saw, and we're talking to customers about, is that their ability to take on some of these transformational projects is challenged. And often I would say it's cultural rather than technology.
Okay.
So the inability, we speak to many people, you feel they've got a problem, but they haven't an ability. In some cases, the problem space feels so large that they're unable to start anything.
Okay.
And what we know in many customers is, or many payments customers, or payments industry people that we speak to, is that ability to undertake a program and successfully complete it to the right timescales is challenging for many of the industries out there. And so that's where we started to look at the problem space, and see, well, how could we put things together. So taking it rather than a normal procurement where everything is led by the customer, and a typical project of multiple procurements and multiple bits of a solution, could we package this thing together and offer a solution as a service that would fix customers' problems? So particularly in the area of the payment switch, which is obviously where we are strongest, is getting away from being the technology provider. Could we package up with a partner the application solution, the creation and implementation of the project, and the running of that, and allow that to be a much simpler environment? Because as many of our payments environments are aging, people are looking at, well, how do they refresh that technology? How do they refresh the application solution? But do we have the skills and the experience and the ability to execute that? And so what we're kind of saying is, well, maybe we could act as that intermediate that says, we could create that as a service for you and allow a defined and more rigid project to go forward that would allow the customer to be successful.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, look, Neil, this is normally where I try and summarize our conversation, but I've got about 3 or 4 pages of notes here. So I just wonder if I could just summarize some of the things that I've heard and that the insights I've gleaned. Would that be okay?
Sure.
So firstly, and I love the fact you started with this, is you see your responsibility as a leader and a general manager to free your team's time so that they can focus their time on helping customers and customers. I love the fact as well, you said your approach is very honest and very real. You're trying to manage people, but at the same time then create a thriving culture. I like your approach in terms of, you said about sort of recruiting and building teams as well, getting that balance between a level of expertise and maturity within a team, but at the same time then benefiting from using an intern system. You obviously benefited from that yourself, but also a different approach there as well, by rather than just giving the intern exposure just to the smaller customer base, etc. Actually, I like that breadth that you had there. And actually, it worked. It's a pragmatic solution that has given return on investment there, because learning how to navigate around those complex businesses is really important, as brought its fruition as well. I like there as well in terms of what you talked about really deeply understanding customers, and in the case of the payment space, understanding card and payment process, because that allows you to understand exactly what the benefits are of what you're doing, but also what the implications are if it doesn't get done.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like as well the sort of side you gave on the navigation around large organizations, the one you work for, and customers. And you mentioned something there about the value of informal networks, because actually with organizations constantly reorging, changing, roles getting, it is our internal networks we reach out to when we want to get something done. Yeah,
Mhm.
when we want to navigate our way through not the hard structure of the organization. And that informal networks, I think, is really important. Um, I then like the way you talk then as well about you know understanding that managing your career moving forward as well is really about um, I love the fact that you're content. There's not that many leaders I look back and go, actually, I'm really content with the choices I made. So that's in business and in life as well, in your family. But also then a couple of elements there that you mentioned about you have to be proactive. You have to put your hands up for projects and they won't always come off, but being visible gives you the opportunity to gain sponsorship and actually get involved in more interesting projects so you can deliver on those, but actually you grow as a result of doing that. I Really important for me was about the value of understanding the value of an idea, but not needing to hold on to it tightly and actually realizing there might be some separate teams we need to put together, or frankly, there might be some teams from other parts of the industry to pull something together to actually try and move that forward. Um, and the final part for me there is about recognizing that one of the biggest challenges in the industry, in the financial services and payments industry, is actually how companies can get stuff done and how they can actually get traction. So that could be even sizing a project or even sizing something at the moment and recognizing this is something that we could deliver on, but then taking a lateral thought then about how you could go about that and not just being we have to be the IT vendor who only delivers this. What's our part that we can add most value to, and who do we need to pull together to enable that, to make that happen? But I think the key thing that stood out for me as you as a leader was the fact that recognizing where you contribute, recognizing actually where you can learn from others. And my big takeaway from this is really the fact that you almost have an open and curious mind to learn from anybody and you don't look at it hierarchically, and that makes you a better leader. They were my takeaways.
Yeah, I think as I say, it stems from when we joined. What the company I joined basically had that approach of you go and ask the question of the person who can answer the question, and it wasn't you had to go through 7 layers of management to achieve that. So if you have got a question for the person in charge, you should be able, in my opinion, to ask that. And so that's what I would encourage my people to do is they don't need to come to me to ask the person that has the right answer. So
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I just need the final word. Is there anything else you'd like to contribute or anything else you'd like to say?
no, just thank you for the opportunity. It's the first time I've done anything like this, and I think it's as I say, as part of growing and developing your career, it was an interesting idea to approach me with. So thank you for that.
Well, look, our pleasure, certainly my pleasure. And I just wanted to, I'm so excited for you to have you on the show because the way you show up authentically and how you lead authentically like that to achieve big, complex tasks, but actually take the people with you during that process as you lead. That's what we're all about as a company, and certainly what the Payments Leaders Show is all about as well. So thank you very much indeed. And look, I hope for the audience, this is certainly, there's lots of nuggets in there about, again, how we can manage complexity, how we can stay customer focused, but at the same time, how we don't need to operate in a hierarchical way and how we can remain open and curious. So until next time, thank you very much. And we'll see you soon.